Many of us have either owned one of these or have seen it elsewhere. More than just a novelty, the phenomena of this knick-knack demonstrates one of the most basic laws of physics. In the early 1600s, Galileo Galilei came up with the notion of something called the moment of inertia. Some years later, Isaac Newton expanded on this finding, and the first law of motion was part of our world. It states that an object will not change its motion unless a force acts on it. This tendency to resist change in a state of motion is called inertia. What this means for us is that it takes a certain amount of force to change the direction of price. That's where this week's indicator called the Dorsey Inertia comes in. Its creator, Donald Dorsey, believed that inertia is a function of trend and that it takes more energy to change or reverse a trend rather than to let it continue in the same direction. He first presented this idea in the September 1995 edition of Stocks and Commodities magazine as an extension of another well-known indicator called the Relative Volatility Index. The RVI is the Relative Strength Index, or RSI, calculated with a standard deviation over several last bars used instead of price change. By applying a linear regression function to the RVI with other smoothing features, this indicator creates Dorsey's inertia signal line. So Dorsey's work is now second cousins away from where it began, and can be classified as a below chart, midline, confirmation indicator. There's not much to this indicator outside the three settings. Just a nice smooth signal line which we've brightened up to lime green and a midline red. We kept the default settings, and in the spirit of keeping it fresh and on point, we settled on the Great British Pound Singapore dollar pair to look at for something new. Ready, steady, snap into a signal line. Alrighty, we've got our first long signal as the signal line crosses over the midline. Let's see how this plays out. Wow, that was a really long run. A lot happened after the initial signal. I'm sure you noticed that we sped up the video so you weren't left twiddling your thumb. There were occasions where you would have closed out trades due to price reversals, and depending on your algorithm, you would have been in more than one trade before it crossed back below. Let's see what this next short brings us. Okay, there was a nice little run before the first retracement, although with some tweaking, you may have pulled in a longer trade with more profits. You may have been in a holding pattern as price became range-bound before starting back up and giving us that new long signal. That was pretty messy. You most likely would have been stopped out before price finally picked a direction. There was a charming run-up before the short signal, so depending on your algo, there may have been a trade there. Did you happen to notice how the signal line sort of hugged the midline? But it was above it, and that's all that matters. We don't care about the amplitude of the signal line. We just look for long and short.
That's all, folks.
So, how did the glow stick green line do for us? Altogether not bad, it just sort of calmed things down for us. Signals were a bit slow and thus somewhat late on the default settings, but we can usually expect to address that through testing. The testing results were actually pretty good, and we feel this would make a decent C2 indicator. Even just eyeballing it on your chart with the rest of your indicators would give you an idea of how it fits into your system. Give it a shot. After all, you may just find this is the missing piece you were looking for. Get it from the Stonehill Forex Indicator Library at no cost. The link is in the video's description. You wouldn't ask him for financial advice, so why would you ask us? We give you the 411 on how to do this yourself. You can do this. We can help. Our only goal is to make you a better trader.